All right, everybody, listen up. Blue Apron is the #1 fresh ingredient and recipe delivery service in the country. My favorite part, how easy the meals are to cook, and, of course, how great they taste. How about some of these upcoming meals? Crispy wild Alaskan pollock and garlic mashed potatoes with roasted broccoli and tartar sauce, cheesy broccoli baked pasta with crispy thyme breadcrumbs, seared steaks, garlic butter with oven fries and romaine salad, roasted chicken and fall vegetables with cranberry and ginger compote. Choose from a variety of new recipes each week, or let Blue Apron's culinary team surprise you. Recipes are not repeated within a year, so you're never going to get bored. Customize those recipes each week based on your preferences. Blue Apron has several delivery options so you can choose what fits your needs. And no weekly commitment, gang, so you only get deliveries when you want them. Each meal comes with a step-by-step, easy-to-follow recipe card and pre-portioned ingredients, and can be prepared in 40 minutes or less. It's so easy. Blue Apron's freshness guarantee promises that every ingredient in your delivery arrives ready to cook, or they'll make it right. Check out this week's menu and get $30 off your first order with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/Mike and Mike. You're going to love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron, so do not wait. That's blueapron.com/Mike and Mike. Blue Apron, it's a better way to cook.
Considering home security? Consider this. For 140 years, ADT has helped stop more crime than any other home security company. The yard sign isn't just a sign, it's a line in the sand. It's no wonder 5 times more people choose ADT to protect their homes. Visit ADT.com to learn more. For license information and terms and conditions, visit ADT.com.
Oh, 2 of my best memories include working out with Michael Irvin, and then you and Chris Carter suggesting that there was no way that it actually happened, and him calling in to confirm that we used to work out together.
He did. He called in and confirmed that. He seems to be that guy when he spots you if you're benching that sweat so much the sweat drips on you, and I don't think you'd handle that very well.
He was very wet in every way working out with him. He used to have these huge bags of ice on his knees at all times, and so he would leave a trail of water behind him, and he would always excuse himself in the middle of a workout because he was getting a phone call from a celebrity. Yeah. No one has ever had, I've never seen his phone, his Rolodex, but like literally, we'd be in the middle of a workout and his phone would ring and go, hold on 1 second, it's Will Smith. And then he would just walk away for 10 minutes and he's talking to Will Smith. That's how Michael Irvin
But honestly, it's a little rude if you're working out. You kind of get out of the flow. Where's your partner to work out then with? It's not a cool thing
But that's
do.
the point. When it's Will Smith, you're taking the call. Yeah. You could either take the call from Will Smith or you could spot Greeny on the bench.
How serious are you about your workout? That's the way I look at it.
Well, I don't think it ever impacted his workout as much as it impacted mine.
If it's important, Will leave a message.
That's probably true. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guest, like Booger McFarland on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. He'll join us live in a second. Booger was texting me yesterday during the debacle that was the Jets and the Buccaneers. Booger is a former Buck and lives in Tampa.
What those back-to-back interceptions?
Well, let me tell you, that game, in all honesty, you could sentence felons to watching the all-22 of that game, and afterwards it could be described as cruel and unusual punishment.
It's tough.
That was one of the worst football games I've ever watched in my entire life, and not just because of the result. If the Jets had managed to win that game, it still would have been just as bad.
It was ugly.
That was a lot. There was just some bad football out there yesterday. Here's the observation I made over the weekend, and granted, this was a particularly good college weekend.
Yes, it was.
And college football is into. I mean, their postseason is kind of different because basically every game they play is in its own way a playoff game. But the atmosphere and the enthusiasm, the excitement that surrounded every college game this weekend, every time you turned one on, it felt exciting. The difference between the experience of watching the games on Saturday versus watching the games on Sunday was night and day.
180. I mean, the college atmosphere, it's a day. You're there. You're at the campus. Even if you're a visiting team coming in and fans coming in, you want to spend hours there. You want to soak up the atmosphere. That just doesn't happen in the NFL. The atmosphere is so much better. It was a shame. It was a little disappointing because we had big games at all the slots, a multiple at the 3:30 and multiple at the 7 and 8 o'clock, and really only the one big one at noon. And unfortunately, it turned out into a rout with Ohio State and Michigan State. I couldn't believe that game. But then, you look forward to the Auburn, Georgia. That turns in, to a rout. Notre Dame, Miami turns into a rout. It was Alabama, Mississippi State, of the top teams out there, the ranked that really had good games. Wisconsin was a rout. So for the 7 ranked games, unfortunately, there were more blowouts than I would have liked.
All right, so Booger is ready to go. We'll start with the college there, and then we'll work our way over to some of his NFL thoughts. Good morning, Booger McFarland.
Top of the morning, fellas. What's happening?
We are well. We love you sitting there on that Skype shot. For those of you watching it on TV, he's just kind of hanging around, and we're the only thing standing between him and his tea time today. So let's get going here. Let's start with the openings. Those who know Booger know you sort of came up in the ranks here at ESPN through the SEC network, so you know the conference backwards and forwards. We have the opening at Florida, and now we have the opening at Tennessee. What is your sense of what's going to happen there at Tennessee?
Well, I think Tennessee first has to examine what type of program they are. Do you want to be a national championship winning program, or are you happy with 8 or 9 wins? They've made a decision that they think they're a national championship winning program, so therefore they have to go get a coach who has national championship pedigree. Now, that doesn't mean that the coach has to have won a national championship, but he better be a coordinator with someone that has. And so I think you're going to start to hear a lot of names. I think when you listen to the AD, they're going to get somebody who they feel thinks of Tennessee the way they do. That's it, as a national championship type winning program. As far as Florida's concerned, I think when you look at Florida, guys, a lot of the names that are out there right now all circle back to one guy, and that's Scott Frost down at UCF. I think when you look at what he's done in Florida recruiting, he took a team that hadn't won any games, and now they're still undefeated. And I think Florida is going to put a bullseye on Scott Frost. It doesn't mean he's going to go there, but I think that's going to be the first call they make, is to make Scott Frost turn the job down.
Again, that undefeated UCF team, really impressive with what they're doing. Let's see where they continue to move up in the rankings. So, Booger, we had the 7 games of ranked versus ranked. We knew there was going to be some craziness going on. So let's just start at the top of your wow list after Saturday night's games were done, and you went, okay, this were a couple of the top things that I took away from all these games.
Well, the first thing I thought about was I was trying to find your number and your wife's number. I was going to call you at home to make sure the Golick family was okay.
Yeah, we saw your tweets.
How are you guys doing?
We saw your tweets because my wife jumped on this one pretty quickly with 2 touchdowns, and you clapped back pretty quick on that one. Yeah, it was a miserable day wherever the Golicks were stationed around the country. It all didn't go too well. Hey, thanks for your concern.
Well, no doubt about it. But, as far as the Miami-Notre Dame game was concerned, guys, I went off the air as we threw to Chris Fowler and Herbie, and they asked me who did I think was going to win. And it was really simple for me. I've always been a guy that thought when you have a battle between a big, powerful offensive line and a big, powerful team going against speed and athleticism, I'm always going to choose speed. It was the same way in Tampa. It was the same way when I was at LSU. And I think what we saw in that game was I think Miami is back. And here's what I mean by that. I don't mean Miami is the favorite to win a national championship, but I think Miami has the caliber of athlete. They have the caliber of coach. I think they're going to be in a situation now where they can compete and they're going to be in the national championship conversation. I think that's what I mean when I say that the U is back, because the speed and the athleticism that they have on defense is outstanding. They're leading the ACC in turnover margin. So they have a formula that shows they can win big games. Now, in my opinion, the game against Clemson will determine who gets into the college football playoff. I think Clemson, Miami, in Charlotte, the ACC championship game, the winner of that game goes to the college football playoff.
Well, there's no question about that. The question would become, if Miami lost a close game there, could they both wind up in? Clearly, one loss Clemson with an ACC championship and the defending national champs, for whatever that's worth in this equation, and the good teams they've beaten, including Auburn, they get in for sure. The question is, if they win a close game against Miami, could the U make an argument that a one-loss Miami team with this huge win over Notre Dame and the others, would they have an argument to get in with the one loss?
No, Green, I don't think so, because if you look at their non-conference schedule, they don't have that big win. They don't have the Ohio State win over Oklahoma last year. They don't have that signature non-conference win, and I think that's the thing that would hold them back. I mean, if you look at their 2 best wins right now, and their 2 good wins, which is Virginia Tech, who lost to Georgia Tech this weekend, so that kind of puts a little tarnish on that win. And right now, their biggest win is against Notre Dame. So you would wind up having a Miami team with 1 loss to Clemson, with their biggest win being Notre Dame, and I don't think they would have enough in the non-conference to put them in the championship game. So I think that is a winner-take-all. Loser might get into New Year's Six, but I don't think the loser gets in the college football playoff. I think the biggest winner of the weekend, guys, was Wisconsin.
Yeah,
because when Notre Dame lost, to me, that took them out of the college football playoff. which in turn opened up a spot for Wisconsin. Because if Notre Dame kept winning, in my opinion, Wisconsin needed a lot of help. I still think they need a little help, but I think the path for them is a lot easier now that Notre Dame has lost.
And I think more people are going along the lines of where a few weeks ago we were saying if Wisconsin's undefeated, they could really be left out, to now if they're undefeated, they have a good chance of being in. So looking,
but what's the help, though? I mean, I'm sorry, Mike, I don't mean to interrupt you, but Booger, you say they still need help. What help do they need? If everything plays out the way it should, if they're an unbeaten conference champ, you're telling me they still need someone else to lose?
Greeny, think about this. I'm going to throw this scenario out there. I think you and I both agree that if Oklahoma wins out, they're in.
Yes.
Okay. Right. The winner of Miami Clemson gets in.
Right.
The SEC champion, in my opinion, gets in, even if it's Auburn. Let's say that Auburn beats Georgia this weekend, beats Alabama in the Iron Bowl, beats Georgia again. So now you have an SEC champion, Auburn Tigers, that's 11-2, that would have beaten 3 top 6 or 7 teams in the last 4 weeks. They get in. Now you have Alabama sitting there at possibly 11-1. What do you do with Alabama that's 11-1, that's been the number one team pretty much in everybody's mind all year, against Wisconsin, who really hasn't played that difficult of a schedule? I'm not saying that Wisconsin wouldn't get in. I'm just saying that is a tough position for the committee, with Alabama sitting there at 11-1, with everything they've done, with Wisconsin, with their non-conference schedule that hasn't been very good, even though they will be Big Ten champions.
Quite honestly, I think Miami would have a better argument to be a second team getting in from a conference than Alabama. If Miami were to lose a 1-point game in the ACC championship game, I think they would have a better resume than Alabama, again, leaving Wisconsin on the outside looking in, which would just, I mean, you want to talk about an implosion going on if an undefeated Big Ten team doesn't make it into. But that's, I think at the end it all plays out. And I still, at the end of the day, Booger, could you see, let's just say, Big Ten undefeated champ left out of the college playoff? I almost think that won't happen.
I don't think it will happen, Golick, but you have to understand what the objective of the College Football Playoff Committee is. It's to get the 4 best teams. It doesn't mean you have to be a conference champion. We saw that last year with Ohio State and Penn State. It's the 4 best teams. And I think people around America get so hung up because it's the old way of thinking. Go undefeated in a big-time conference, you're guaranteed to get in. That's not the new way of thinking. The new way of thinking is really simple. We have a 13-person committee that has 5 coaches on it, and their job is to get the 4 best teams. And if you don't think that Wisconsin, even with being undefeated and Big Ten champions, are one of the 4 best teams, then you don't put them in. And so, to your point, Golick, if you have a Miami team that's 12-1, you have an Alabama team that's 11-1, you have a Wisconsin team that's 13-0, think about the conversation in that room when guys ask this question. Well, if Wisconsin played Alabama, who would win? If Wisconsin played Miami, who would win? So you have all those different type conversations going on to determine the 4 best teams. Yes, resume comes in. Resume will be a part of it, but it's the 4 best teams. And to me, that's the fascinating part, which is why I say Wisconsin is not home free.
I would say if Wisconsin takes care of their business in that title game by a good amount, I think they're going to be in. Because you look at the chance, they're going to play Michigan, which is going to be ranked this week. They're going to jump into the rankings. They just smoked Iowa, who was in the rankings. And Ohio State will move up because of all the losses that took
Northwestern is ranked, and they beat us.
Northwestern is ranked.
And in this scenario, they'd have to have beaten Ohio State.
So that's what I think a lot of it comes down to. We keep talking about if you lose by a little, like Miami, but if you win by a lot, if Wisconsin were to 14-point Ohio State, Greeny, I virtually think they would be a lock to get in at that point if they beat them that bad. But you know what? We have a lot of time to play all this out.
Okay. Mike, you want to move on to some more college stuff and move on to some NFL stuff?
Well, I guess one more on college. How vulnerable is Alabama after what we saw against Mississippi State? How vulnerable is Alabama against Auburn?
I think they're very vulnerable, Golden, because they're very beat up. And nobody wants to hear about it, neither do I, because they got 5-star after 5-star after 5-star. But they got linebackers that were playing that probably shouldn't have been playing. They were young guys. They got 4 or 5 linebackers that have been out for the season. The defensive line, their depth was depleted. The offensive line, they lost another guy. Injuries are starting to ravage this team. And I think when you look at what they do and how they want to play you, which is physical and run the football and play great defense, that hurts their style of play. Now, what we did see from Alabama is we saw Jalen Hurts grow up. There was a drive, 2 drives in that game. They were down 24-17.
Yep.
And when they were tied 24-24, Jalen Hurts did what we thought he could do, but we needed to see him take the ball, throw the football, drive it down the field, and win the game. And I think he's done that. And we want to talk about a year when the Heisman Trophy candidates are up and down. I think right now Baker Mayfield has already booked his reservation in New York. We're looking for two other people. How come it couldn't be a Jalen Hurts? Because he's starting to come on strong at the end of the year. And that performance against Mississippi State in that fourth quarter was absolutely outstanding. So he continues to drive this team. And I think if you're Alabama, the vulnerability has never been as high because of all the injuries.
I tell you what, he was phenomenal late in that game, converting on fourth downs. And the guy who was unreal on that team is Calvin Ridley.
Yep.
You look at them, Booger, give me an assessment on him, because they could not stop him in that game. And without him, there's no way in the world Alabama wins.
Greeny, it sounds crazy because Alabama runs the football so much, but he's the best wide receiver in America. You talk to McShay, you talk to Mel Kiper. He's an older guy, very mature, doesn't say a lot, but his route running is outstanding. He can go across the middle. He can go deep. His hands are pretty sure. And he's a pro's pro. Golick would love this guy. He doesn't say a lot. He doesn't complain about not getting the football. He blocks well. And to me right now, he's a guy that can come into the NFL. He'll start from day one. He'll play 10 or 12 years. You won't hear from him. He'll remind you a lot of Marvin Harrison. He'll be very productive, and he won't say a lot. I love Calvin Ridley.
All right, let's moving on to the pros. Let's start over in the NFC with what teams like Minnesota are doing and New Orleans are doing and the Rams are doing. Philly was off this week. How do you kind of assess the NFC, the top of the NFC right now?
Well, it's amazing what coaching will do. And you can start with the Rams and look at, we all were ready to throw Jared Goff out to pasture, and that's including me. But you bring in Sean McVay as a coach, and you can see when your quarterback is playing well, your entire team feeds off that. And the Rams, that defense, they've always had a really good defense. The defensive line is playing well. And by the way, will somebody get Aaron Donald a check for $100 million? Just go ahead and pay the man. The Rams are outstanding. When you look at the Eagles are playing the best football right now is because they're using their weapons to their advantage. They're not trying to say, you know what, I want to play this way. What Peterson has done is say, you know what, I have a quarterback that's athletic, a quarterback that has a big arm. I'm going to get him out of the pocket. I'm going to allow him to move around, use his athleticism. I'm not going to be afraid to allow my quarterback to run. But the surprise to me of the NFC has been the New Orleans Saints, because as long as I've been in the NFL or associated with it, the Saints have been a soft team. The Saints wanted to throw it 50 times a game. They wanted to try to create turnovers on defense. They are playing in a way that will travel, running the football, Alvin Kamara, Ingram, and more importantly, the offensive line. And so when you look at the formula that it takes to win in the NFL, especially when the weather changes and it gets cold and the leaves turn orange and brown, you got to be able to run the football, because when it's windy, you can't throw it. And you better be able to stop the run, and you better have 5 fat dudes up front that can come off the rock. And the New Orleans Saints have that, and I love the way they're playing. So I think the NFC right now, you throw those 3 teams in there, and for some reason, I still can't forget about Seattle. And I understand they may not look as good as the other teams on a week-in and week-out basis, but when you have championship pedigree, I'm always going to put you in the mix. So I think those are the teams that I would put in the mix in the NFC.
And not Atlanta?
I'm still, Greeny, listen, just because you have one performance that's up to par, there's no saying that I go by. Water always finds its level. So they've been up and down and up and down. At some point, we have to find out what their level is. Last year, their level was extremely high. This year, their level has been low. So just because they have a pretty good performance against the Cowboys, who were playing not with a full deck, I'm not all of a sudden going to react to it. I need to see them do it consistently. Adrian Claiborne had the game of his life. Now, can you do it consistently? Can you do it week in and week out? The offense played better, but can you do it consistently? So I'm not ready to put Atlanta in the conversation with those other guys just yet. Just like with New England. Earlier in this season, what did we say about New England? We need to see it more and more. We all thought that they would come out of this funk, and they did, but we had to see it. I need to see it a little bit more with Atlanta.
And then one final thought for both of you guys. You both played in the league a long time. Have you ever seen a coach challenge a play and have it go as badly as what happened to John Fox with the Bears yesterday? It's like talking your way into a bank while there's a robbery going on. For those of you who didn't get a chance to see it, there was a play that it looked like the Bears had scored a touchdown. The referees ruled that the officials ruled that the man had stepped out of bounds, like on the 3-yard line. They clearly his foot doesn't touch out of bounds, so they challenged that. Looks like it's going to be a touchdown. Instead, they rule that he lost control of the ball hitting the pylon, and it turns into a one of those touchbacks. The worst rule in the whole sport, by the way, that touchback on the fumble into the end zone.
Agree.
But they challenged their way into a turnover. That I've never seen that before.
If they don't challenge, they have first and goal on the 2. But I get the challenge, and I heard people, Booger, saying, well, the person up in the booth needs to be able to tell the difference. I didn't see it till maybe the 4th or 5th replay, the last replay they showed when you saw the ball out of his hands. And so I don't know what the person saw up in the booth, but clearly if they saw that replay where the ball was out of his hands, they would have told the coach, don't challenge this thing. So I think that's unfair to say the coach upstairs should have known. I don't know if he saw that replay, but, man, you want to talk about when things don't go your way, how that can just add up.
Well, no doubt. And if you're John Fox, man, you got to be saying, woe is me. You know, I mean, we start Mike Glennon, then we go to Trubisky, and we get killed for that. And now in a game that we have an opportunity to win, we're trying to challenge an out of bounds, and woe is me. We lose the ball, and now it's a touchback. And so my thing and my question would be, I didn't know you could challenge one thing and then the guy in the box look at it and say, okay, I know you didn't challenge this, but what about this other thing? I was a little confused by that rule. And so I would love Dean Blandino, whoever took Dean Blandino's job, to explain that to me, because if I were a coach, that would have me very hesitant to challenge things and be a little afraid to pull the trigger, because you don't know what you might do. You might call back a touchdown when you were trying to figure something else out. And so that would be a question for one of those guys on 345 Park Avenue.
I thought the same thing, but then my thought was, if you couldn't do that, what was the ref going to say about the replay then? When he flipped the mic back on, what was he going to say? Because he didn't step out of bounds, so how are you going to decide the replay?
Yeah, you're only challenging one thing.
Yeah,
but now everything comes into play.
Exactly right. There was nothing else. What was he going to say? Well, he didn't step out of bounds, and then, okay, I'm done talking.
Yeah. I mean, should they have a rule where, like, if you're challenging a play, the worst that can happen to you is the status quo.
Exactly.
Things can only get better.
This
is a game they lost by one touchdown. They lost this game by 7 points, and they challenged their way into a turnover from the 2-yard line. Yeah. I've never seen anything like that before. All right, Booger, we'll see you later.
Thanks,
Thank
Booger.
you, my friend.
Anytime. Take it easy, guys.
It's Booger McFarland with us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance
I thought the same
line.
thing, about should they be able to do that. But then I thought, what was the ref going to say there? The challenge is correct. He didn't step out of bounds. Then what? I mean, what could
I guess
you do?
There's nothing else they can do. I still don't like that rule. I've never fully understood the rule.
You were right. He didn't step out of bounds. But I got a really bad
look
butt
on
for you
Fox's
right
face
now.
when that ruling came down. The look on his face was just one of absolute shock, and understandably so. They challenged their way out of the game the way it ended.
Hey everyone, Mike Golick here. Support for Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. With Rocket Mortgage, you can apply simply and understand fully so you can mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLSconsumeraccess.org number 3030.
Home isn't just a place, it's a feeling. Whether you're at home, your business, or online, ADT helps keep you safe. With security systems, home automation, alarms, and surveillance, so you can feel at home, wherever you are. Go to ADT.com to get that feeling. ADT. Home. Safe home.
All right, we talked a lot about it leading into last weekend. It was one of the most loaded college football weekends that we've ever seen with all these ranked matchups.
I'm very upset at Gus Malzahn and Auburn. I mean, I was looking forward to the weekend, so we had 3 spotlight games. You had Ohio State, Michigan State blowout. You had the Notre Dame-Miami game, which obviously I was very interested in going to Notre Dame. My kids there at then. And that turned out to be a blowout. At the 3:30 game, we had Georgia and Auburn. Okay, let's make this a good game, and his Auburn team blows out Georgia. What are you going to do?
He probably didn't feel too badly about it. Here he is, the coach of the Auburn Tigers, played their way into the national championship discussion with that win. And the coach joins us here on Mike and Mike. Good morning, Coach. Congratulations.
Hey, good morning. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for taking a few minutes today. And I know that there'll be a lot of attention paid to the performance of your quarterback with 4 total touchdowns, but let's talk about your defense and the job that they did. You allowed a touchdown on the opening drive, and then after that, you basically shut them down for the rest of the time that game was a game. Why was your defense so successful on Saturday?
I tell you, we played real good defense all year, and they did have a good drive. Give us credit, and went down and scored. We made the adjustments. Very proud of our defensive front. Our defensive front's one of the best in the country, and our run fits were very good because Georgia's run game is one of the best. The 2 running backs they have are as good as anybody, and for us to hold those guys to 46 yards rushing was really something.
Incredible. They carried the ball 32 times for 46 yards. You guys ran it 46 for 237. Now, certainly as a coach, you wait till there's all zeros on the clock till you really know you secured the victory, but you also know players and been around a lot of games. Was there a point in this game where you just said, man, this is real, our guys are looking about as good as they can look right now, and you really thought things were in your favor?
Yeah, I tell you, when we went up by 30 points and scored the touchdown, it was, I can't remember how many minutes were left on the clock, but you were able to enjoy it. And, we've had some tough games this year and tough times, and our guys have overcome adversity, and it was just a really special moment that we played our best game, when we needed to, and we beat a very good team soundly, and we're playing good football right now.
It's nice to hear a coach say that during a game you were able to enjoy it, because sometimes, you guys are thought of as robots where you just don't enjoy it, you never can, and as soon as you win, you move on to the next game. Were the players that way as well on the sideline? I mean, was this one of those where you actually got to smell the roses a little bit even before the game was over?
Yeah, there's no doubt, and it was great to see our players, have fun playing a great game of football in a big game in a big environment. Our fans were off the charts, and of course I've been here 8 years and been fortunate to be a part of some huge games in our stadium, and last Saturday night was as good as it gets.
I was also thinking, Gus Malzahn, head coach of Auburn, is with us, also thinking that you had that time to consider and contemplate what you wanted to say to your players, because you're also well aware that you didn't just win a game. You played yourself directly into the SEC championship conversation. You played yourself directly into the national championship conversation. So we've been doing that like crazy from the moment that game ended on Saturday. And here's Auburn's path. They beat Alabama, they beat Georgia again, and boom, they're playing in the Final Four. What did you say to your team about the consequences of that win?
Yeah, I just wanted them to enjoy the moment. I guess a few weeks back we said, we got to win 5 in a row, and that was number 3. I wanted them to enjoy it. Of course, we have to lose them in a row this week, and our focus is on them. And I know everybody else is talking about the next one, but it'll be big enough, and our guys will be ready for that. We can't get distracted. I mean, you see every week top teams in the country after big wins get distracted, and we can't fall in that category. We've got to stay focused and just take care of lose them in a row, and then we'll cross that bridge the next week.
Do you do something special for that? Because while you can do that as a coach, you realize these are 18 to 22-year-olds who all of a sudden everybody, on the outside is going to look at the game coming up and say, oh, this is a breather for them before they get to Alabama. And they're going to hear and read on Twitter and everywhere that, man, they run this table. They're going to be in the Final Four. So for you, it's one thing. For these young men, it's a little different. So is there an exercise you have to go through to get that across to them?
Yeah, Mike, you're exactly right. And, I'm just very honest with our team and up front. We had that exact conversation yesterday in our team meeting. And we got to be different. We can't be like every other team because it is real. When they turn on ESPN or listen to the radio or Twitter or anything like that, that's all they're going to hear. But we got to be better than that, and we got to be disciplined and just take care of one game at a time. So, we got really good leadership, and I will be very surprised if we don't do that.
And how it works from the public side, you talk about teams that are in the higher in the rankings and stuff, and you guys are starting to put yourself now. But with the 2 losses, there hadn't been a lot of talk about your team. Give us something about your team. Tell us why Auburn is as good as they are right now, and we are talking about you in the Final Four if you're able to run the table.
Yeah, we have a talented team. We have a team that we felt like would have a chance to win the SEC championship, before the season started. We experienced some growing pains on offense. We had a new quarterback, and he's a very talented quarterback. We had a new offensive coordinator. It just took a little time to gel, and obviously we played Clemson early on didn't play well, but we learned from it. We had a tough loss on the road at LSU where we were up 20 points, and they came back and beat us, and, we faced major adversity. And when you do that, you either get better or you fold your tent. Our guys decided to get better. They rolled their sleeves up, and they're in a real good spot right now.
Tell us about that, because when we always talk about losing early, losing late, you lose early to Clemson, but they're sitting there at number 3. It's definitely a loss you guys can overcome, playing through the rest of the season. But then you lose in October. You lose that game 27-23 to LSU, where a lot of people think, 2 losses, that's kind of the death knell for a college playoff. So take us to that week and what you told the players and how they reacted to everything.
Well, we knew we were going to face major adversity, from everyone and everywhere, and we just said we can do one or two things. And our leadership decided to buckle up and finish this thing. And we knew we controlled our own destiny. So we just had a plan and a blueprint moving forward for that, and so far they followed it to a T.
Will you be paying attention to tomorrow night? There's a lot of discussion about where your team will fall in the new college football playoff rankings, and maybe it doesn't make any difference because you have these monster games still in front of you. But will you pay attention to where you wind up tomorrow?
No, just to be honest with you, we won't, because we know we already played the number 1 team, and we're probably going to play another number 1 team. And then, of course, if you win that, you go to the SEC championship and probably play a top 5 team. So, I think the ball's in our court, and so we just got to seize the moment.
There's no question about that. Hey, Coach, congratulations. It was a sensational performance, and we're looking forward to watching what happens next. Good luck.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Coach.
Gus Malzahn on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get instant gold status at Shell. Join the Fuel Rewards program now at fuelrewards.com/gold. I think he's got that right. I don't think it makes any difference they are tomorrow night.
I completely agree. It makes no difference. They can be in the position to be the first 2-loss team in the Final Four. They went out, they're going to be in. They are going to be one of the teams. I mean, understand that schedule. In playing a number 3 Clemson early in the season, they did lose that game, but what a way to be able to finish by playing number 1 Georgia, and then in 2 weeks they'll play number 1 Alabama, and then they'll go back to the SEC title game against.
Where does Georgia wind up tonight? Who's higher tomorrow night? Georgia or Auburn? Auburn has 2 losses. They just met head-to-head, and Auburn won soundly.
Okay, Auburn was at 10 last week. Obviously, Georgia was at number 1.
So where do they fall, and who's ahead of who?
I think Auburn will be ahead of Georgia.
So Auburn goes all the way to 6?
With that win, I think it's exactly right. Looking at the rankings, you said early on what you thought it would be Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, and Miami. Whatever order, that's going to be the 4. Right, that's going to be. I agree. That's going to be the 4. Whatever order you want to put them in. I think then Wisconsin and then Auburn. I think Auburn is number 6. I think in that first 2 out, I think they are there. So that means I think Georgia will probably drop to 7. They just beat them too badly. Again, if this was a close game, maybe you think differently because Auburn does have the 2 losses, and that was Georgia's first loss. If it was a close game, they blew their doors off. It was 16-7 at halftime, but they smoked them in the second half. Georgia's a great rushing team. They held them to 46 yards rushing. They dominated that game. So I do think they'll be number 6. I do think they'll jump Georgia in this one, and he is exactly right, Coach. Their path is set. They take care of business. I mean, I can't think of another time within a 3-week span a team has played the number 1 team twice. Georgia being number 1, beating them, and then the new number 1, Alabama will be number 1. And this is the AP poll. We'll see where they are in the rankings.
Yeah.
But that playing teams and beating teams that highly ranked, and then they'll get a Georgia team if they win against Alabama in the SEC title game that'll still be in the top 10 in Georgia. I would imagine.
Seems impossible to imagine that Auburn does not become the first 2-loss team ever to get in if they win it.
I don't see how you can end the season beating those 2 teams if they do that.
The question is, does Alabama still get in? If Alabama loses a close game on the road to Auburn, does Alabama with 1 loss get in?
And I'll say again, Miami losing a close game to Clemson in the ACC title game has a better chance in my eyes to
than Alabama?
In Alabama, yes. If they lose a close game to Clemson and it's their first loss, I think they would have a better chance or a better argument.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I've never felt more alive. Disclaimer. Geico cannot guarantee you will feel more alive. You either possess functioning respiratory and circulatory systems, or you do not, or you are a zombie. If you are indeed a brain-starved zombie and you would like to save money on car insurance, the Geico legal team applauds your excellent life choices, even in your shambling afterlife. But we strongly encourage you to visit geico.com or download the Geico app. Please stay a minimum of 500 feet away from our large and presumably delicious, delicious brains.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Mike and Mike, congratulations on an incredible 18-year run. You've provided endless great moments to your millions of fans, not to mention epic performances at our All-Star Celebrity Game. Mike Golick, I understand you're taking time off before the new show, and Greeny is still figuring out his start date. Greeny, just don't wait too long. You and I both can't stand to see healthy talent resting. Most importantly, thank you guys. There are a lot of great traditions in sports. The morning routine of listening to your show is one of them. We'll really miss you together, but look forward to being part of each of your next endeavors.
Oh, what a line. What a line.
That's very nice.
That was very nice.
For those on the radio, in case it wasn't obvious, that was Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA.
2 lines there about you and he hating
healthy resting,
and the other was our great participation in the NBA All-Star Game, which we stunk.
We coached well.
The coaching was awesome. The playing was horrific.
Yeah. He took a very well-deserved shot at us there. He's been something else. He has come in. You know, it's interesting. If you look at the time that we've been together, the big commissionerships have all turned over.
Yes.
I believe Gary Bettman was already in office by the time that we came in 2000.
I think he was as well.
But certainly David Stern yielding to Adam Silver and Bud Selig to Rob Manfred and Paul Tagliabue to Goodell. If you look at both Goodell and Silver were known for something immediately.
Yes.
And one of them had sort of stuck around in a positive way, and Goodell had turned the other way.
Turned the other way on him, yeah.
You know, Goodell, when he first came in, was the law and order commissioner, and everybody loved it.
Including the players, including them, loved it.
And now, I mean, it could ultimately be his downfall.
Yep.
If you look at the thing, if Jerry Jones can really figure out, I don't think he will. I don't think you think he will either.
I don't think he will, no.
But if Jerry Jones can figure out a way to gum up the works in there, then that really ultimately, I think, he can say anything he wants. Jerry Jones he wasn't going with this option until Ezekiel Elliott got suspended.
Yep.
That changed everything.
Completely
I don't care what
agree.
anybody said.
Again, we really appreciate Adam Silver doing the shout out. We really do. Mike and Mike brought to you by Dollar Shave Club. Upgrade to shaving with a fresh blade whenever you want for a fraction of the price. Join dollarshaveclub.com today.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you there. Yeah, that was very nice of him to do that. And it's one thing just to say, something, but that sort of felt like he gave a little thought and put a little time and effort into that.
That was nice.
So much appreciated, Commissioner.
Right.
Thank you. All right, so let's go back here. So Hembo sent me a note. For whatever it's worth, and the sample size is so small, it's only 3 years.
Right.
But no team of the 12 that have made it into the college football playoff have ever lost a game from this point forward.
Right.
So we're going into none of the 12 teams that have made the playoff ever lost a game in week 12 or later. That's this coming weekend. The latest regular season loss for any is week 11. Clemson and Washington both lost on that date last season in their third to last regular season game. And, of course, they both wound up getting in to the college playoff, and Clemson wound up winning the championship. So how many teams do we think could lose from this point forward and still get in?
Miami and Alabama. The 2 undefeateds there. Wisconsin, I don't think so. I'm looking at the undefeateds.
Wisconsin, I totally agree with you. Wisconsin definitely cannot afford to lose.
I think Miami. I think by the time the ACC championship game happens, 2 ACC teams will be in the top 4 in the rankings. Would you agree? Clemson and Miami.
I think they will be tonight.
Yeah, exactly right. And
or tomorrow. I keep saying tonight.
Tomorrow.
It's tomorrow.
Well, I mean, they got to play the rest of their games. So this is the hypothetical of them winning the rest of their games. Again, for Miami, it's Pitt and I forgot who else. I wrote down who else. I know who else it is. Virginia and Pitt. So I think if Miami were to lose a very close game, we'd have to see what other circumstance in the ACC title game there'd be a chance. If Alabama beats Auburn in 2 weeks, Auburn's going to be right up there. Auburn, I think, is going to be 6 after tomorrow. So Auburn will be highly ranked. In the Iron Bowl, if Alabama beats them, and they'll be securely up in that number 1 spot, I would imagine. Then if they lose the SEC championship game to Georgia, then it's still possible to me Alabama could get in because Georgia's still going to be in the top.
How about if Alabama loses a close game to Auburn?
and then doesn't play in the SEC championship game.
They're going to have one loss either way.
They're going to have one loss either way, right. But going to losing in the SEC title game certainly would be
a closer loss to Georgia. If that happened, it would set up a really interesting scenario.
Yes, it would.
Because you'd have a 3-team, like if Auburn beats Alabama, they get to play Georgia again. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's what happens. Mm-hmm. If Alabama beats Auburn and then Georgia beats Alabama, you got these. You got
a little
teams.
Three-way swing there. Yeah,
Georgia would be the conference champion, and that would be the enormous advantage they'd have to break that three-way tie. So you're right. I hadn't really considered that. I was thinking more along the lines of Alabama losing to Auburn. What if Alabama beats Auburn? Because then it eliminates Auburn.
Yeah, it does.
And then it becomes really just a two-way.
Yes, Auburn's done
the three-way thing. Auburn's so out of it at that point.
With 3 losses, they're done. And then if Alabama lost a close game to a Georgia team, because Georgia would move back up. If Alabama beat Auburn in the Iron Bowl, Auburn's going to drop back down. Georgia's going to move up higher. So now that SEC title game is going to have a number one against a number whatever.
Well, I don't see anywhere in the world that the SEC champ doesn't get in.
Agreed.
The question is whether a second team from the SEC could get in, and that team is Alabama.
Yes.
And maybe they could afford to lose either of the two games. And by definition, they can't lose both. It's so much fun to think about. That's what makes the system so good. We'll continue with Magic Johnson next.
Hey girl, have you done something new with your scales? Using new moisturizer? Nice. It really brings out the hazel in your eyes. Oh, hold on. Are you using whitening strips too? Your fangs look good, girl. Really good.
A really charming snake charmer? Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
Wait, what? Have you been doing Pilates too?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.